Of Jagersfontein in the Free State wants the owners of a mine in the community to pay damages for what happened after a wall collapsed there on Sunday and destroyed their homes and other property. On Sunday, a dam basically burst and killed at least one person. Dozens were injured. More than 300 people have been displaced. Let's speak now to Richard Spoor, a legal expert. Mr. Spoor, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time. You have, in fact, been taking a closer look at the timeline leading up to the collapse on Sunday.
Yes, I have, and thank you. The critical things that have emerged in the last little while are the following. That in 2019, the mine's own consultants produced a report saying that we can only continue dumping tailings on this dam for another year, and then it will exceed its design capacity. And that's a report that was also made available to the Department of Water Affairs. We then know that shortly after receiving that report, the department made a finding that the mine was dumping excessive quantities of tailings onto the dump, and told them to stop, or to show cause why they shouldn't be ordered to stop. There was a response from the mine saying, we don't want to stop. If we stop, it will be expensive. We will have to retrench jobs. We will have to retrench people if you force us to do that. Then on the 22nd of December 2020, the Department of Water Affairs sent a directive. That means an order directly to the mine. First of all, they said to them, despite us telling you that you're dumping excessive quantities of water and waste onto this dam, you have continued to do so in violation of the directive that we issued against you. They go on to say that, your demand that we don't take into account the safety of the dam because people are going to lose their jobs is unacceptable. And they say, and I quote, "It's the mandate of this department," that's Water Affairs, "to act in the interest of ensuring water resources are protected and ensuring safety aspects relating to all water-related infrastructure." They went on to say that we find your reasons unconvincing, and we are now issuing a directive, again I quote, "Cease all aspects of your operation relating to further disposal of any waste material on the fine tailings disposal facility." And that was a clear, unambiguous directive given to the mine after a previous warning that they should desist, and that was in December 2020. Mm-hmm. So 2 years later, the mine fails. There's also, if I may just add, there's another report by consultants who were prepared to deal with this directive of the department, which was a breach analysis, in other words, the risk of this dam failing. And what they found is that if there was a breach, 20 million cubic meters of waste would inundate the local township. And they identified, again a quote, "a serious risk in association with a fine tailing disposal facility that's subject to the directive." And they cautioned them to put in place emergency preparedness planning so that they could alert this. This mine was fully aware of the risks. They were violating their conditions. They were violating a directive from the Department of Water Affairs.
Quite interesting that you've been able to track down those reports, right? Because barely 24 hours ago, I was speaking to Mr. Marius de Villiers, who is with the compliance division. I think he's the, in fact, compliance officer at Jagersfontein Developments, which owns this mine on behalf of a Dubai-based company. And he was telling us that a report they got back in June showed no indication that there was a very real risk of that dam bursting and unleashing this disaster, this horror, on the community surrounding that area. So would it be fair to say that at this point, that official line was a lie?
Well, somebody is spinning here, because SRK, in a report of 27 November 2020, indicated a serious risk. They were ordered by the department to stop. They were in excess of their license requirement, their license conditions. They were dumping materials on a dam that was in excess, that couldn't accommodate these additional tailings. It couldn't accommodate the volume, the quantities that they were putting, and the volume that they had put on top of the dam exceeded the design specifications and limitations applicable to this dam. So this accident is not surprising. I imagine that in the course of selling it from Renit, or selling the shares in Jagersfontein from Renit to this Dubai-based company, this must have formed part of some kind of due diligence, so perhaps they commissioned additional reports. But whatever reports they commissioned, they contradict the 2019 and 2020 reports that they had in their possession, and more critically, it contravenes a clear directive issued to them by the Department of Water Affairs.
Does that mean then there's a solid case here for the community to pursue a lawsuit or even criminal liability on the part of the mining company for what's happened this week?
Well, a failure to comply with a directive of the Department of Water Affairs is liable, and this was spelled out in a letter from the Department of Water Affairs to the mine that said, if you contravene this directive, and if you fail to do what we're telling you to do, you're liable, you're guilty of an offence, and you're liable on first conviction to a fine or imprisonment not exceeding 5 years, or both a fine and imprisonment. If for a second contravention, 10 years imprisonment. So they were warned, they were told, it's a criminal offence if you continue dumping onto this dam. Yet it appears as if they persisted with that criminal conduct.
You've worked with class action lawsuit cases. Would that be successful, do you think, or are they good prospects?
Look, never mind the lawfulness. You know, these kinds of disasters have occurred in South Africa. We've heard a lot about Mary Spruit. 2 years ago at Brumadinho in Brazil, there was a catastrophic failure, 240 dead. I was part of the commission that was investigating that accident. There are new guidelines that have been issued internationally for how to take care of tailings dams to prevent these kinds of disasters. The Mine Health and Safety Act has detailed specifications. The National Water Act has clear regulations on how you run and maintain a dump like this in a safe condition. One of the crucial requirements is that you monitor it very closely. And this was one of the recommendations that was made to Jagersfontein, close monitoring. So you're looking for any movement in the dam wall, you're looking for leaks, you're looking for erosion, you're looking for water that's oozing through this dam wall. And when you see those signs of possible failure, then you have a chance to put into action your emergency plan. You warn people, you have a prepared plan. How are you going to do this? How are you going to warn the community about what's going to happen? And you evacuate that area so that they'll be safe. None of these things appear to be had regard to. And we've had this catastrophic accident and significant loss of life. Mm-hmm. To my mind, there is no question about Jagersfontein's liability under the civil law for gross contraventions of the applicable legislation. Final question then. 20 million rand has now been approved by the board of Jagersfontein Developments. That is to assist, that's the wording used, some of the people affected by the disaster on Sunday. Now, we're not clear who's going to get how much and on what basis. But does that sound to you as, quote-unquote, fair compensation, so to speak? I'm sure, and I'm giving the mine the benefit of the doubt, that this is a kind of an emergency stopgap measure to ameliorate the harm. I see that government has also indicated that it will provide substantial assistance to the people who've been affected. But, 20 million doesn't begin to undo the kind of harm that we've seen. The destruction of houses and property, the loss of people's lives, it's an incalculable amount. I mean, then you've got the rehabilitation, you've got the cleanup of the environment. We're talking about 20 million cubic meters of waste, harmful waste, class 3 waste, that should be stored in a dam with a liner, contains significant quantities of arsenic. it's a really major impact. We're only going to see the full scale of the disaster, I think, over time. It'll take a while before we really understand and appreciate the scale of this disaster.
Richard Spoor, good to have your time. Thank you.